Hello. This is an online discussion of euthanasia and assisted suicide sponsored by the Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet for June 6th, 2014. My name is Amy Hasbrook. I'm the director of Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet. We are a project of the Council of Canadians with Disabilities to unify, inform, and give voice to the disability opposition to assisted suicide, euthanasia, and other ending-of-life practices that tend to have a disproportionate and discriminatory effect on people with disabilities. TVNDY takes a position against these practices for several reasons, and here are some of the principal reasons, though not all of them. We have lots of reasons. But first of all, we believe it's unnecessary because everyone already has the option to refuse medical treatment and to have pain relief, palliative care, even to the point of palliative sedation until the natural disease process takes its course. Secondly, we believe that assisted suicide and euthanasia laws are discriminatory because people without disabilities who express a desire to die are generally given suicide prevention treatments. We as a society have a suicide prevention policy, but that prevention is not applied equally to people with disabilities, because when folks with disabilities say they want to die, or people who are at the end of life, everybody says, oh, we understand why you would want to die. And so those folks are not only encouraged to, but also aided to kill themselves. And we believe that's discrimination. Thirdly, we believe that there can be no free choice to die as long as people with disabilities and people at the end of life don't have a free choice in where and how they live. And that's very true for people with disabilities because of lack of home-based care options, lack of accessibility, transportation, lack of livable income, etc. And finally, we have observed that the safeguards have not prevented the deaths of people who should not have died. So people who've not asked to die, and even people who've indicated that they don't want to die, have actually been killed in jurisdictions where this is legal. So we don't feel that the safeguards are, as they're currently used, are sufficient to prevent unwanted deaths. The goal of our online discussion is to give people with disabilities a chance to talk about these issues among ourselves. The media tend to portray this issue as a fight between progressives on the one hand and conservative religious people on the other, completely ignoring people with disabilities, although in fact we are the people who are most directly affected. Even people who have a terminal illness or a degenerative illness, who may be approaching the end of life, also have a disability, whether or not they want to acknowledge it. And so people with disabilities are the most directly affected, yet we are the least represented in the discussion. And so we wanted to give a space for folks with disabilities to talk about the issues that are of concern to us, the way the medical establishment treats folks with disabilities, finding services that we need, that kind of stuff, and how these services as they exist don't work, and how some of the laws can be very coercive. There are a lot of ways to participate. First of all, there's Google Hangouts on air, and before the session I always tweet and put on our Facebook page the address for the Google Hangouts on our air. Also, you can go to our website, which is at tvndy.ca, select the Events tab, and then select the date on the calendar, and you can you can join us by watching the YouTube transmission and asking questions there. And you can also go to YouTube itself, do a search, and you'll find the discussion. There's a comment section on the YouTube page where you can make comments, and I try to remember once or twice during the session to check for comments. I'll have to look closely at the screen, so that might be a little disruptive, but hopefully people will come on and comment. Also, the Q&A on the Google Hangouts, there's also a Q&A option. If you don't want to come on the video and speak, you can use the Q&A option. For more information on anything that you see or hear during this discussion, you can go to our website at tvndy.ca. You can go to our Facebook page at facebook.com/toujours vivant, not dead yet. You can follow me on Twitter at @TVNDY, or you can email me directly at tigrlily61@gmail.com. Okay, today's topics, well, we really have only one topic today, and that is that the medical aid in dying law was adopted in Quebec yesterday. This is very frustrating and sad and angry for those of us who worked against it for the past 4 years. You know, I believe it's bad law, and we'll get into it, but I first want to read you a press release, or from a press release issued by the group Living with Dignity, and this is a non-religious group of Quebec citizens with, you know, not specifically a disability group, but this is their summary. Living with Dignity denounces the adoption of Law 52 on the end of life care. Montreal, June 5th, 2014. Dramatic day for Quebec today. By a vote of 94 to 22, the members of the National Assembly have adopted Bill 52, an act respecting end-of-life care. The citizen network Living with Dignity denounces the new law, which allows anyone who meets the eligibility criteria to request and obtain death on demand by a doctor. Our elected representatives from all parties have failed in their duty to protect the most vulnerable and have lifted a ban that has existed since the time of Hippocrates, more than 24 centuries ago, and which is the foundation of medicine and of life in society that is respectful of others. Now in Quebec, the act of a doctor who kills a person at his request to end his suffering, instead of relieving the suffering, will be considered health care. Moreover, medical aid in dying, as the law calls it, must be offered without exception by all public institutions in Quebec, hospitals, long-term care centers, and local health and social service centers, regardless of the beliefs of the management staff or staff of the institution. With some exceptions, our elected officials have also chosen to ignore that Quebec does not have jurisdiction to decriminalize euthanasia. Killing a patient, even at his or her request, is not a medical treatment. It is a homicide, and as such, prohibited by the Federal Criminal Code. When engineers warn us that a bridge is unsafe, we hurry to prohibit traffic on that bridge. Why then would we choose to ignore, in contempt of the most vulnerable in our society, experts like Dr. Balfour Mount, a Montrealer, awarded the Order National du Québec for his pioneering work on palliative care in North America, and like Jean Vanier, founder of l'Arche, who was also awarded the Ordre National du Québec. Both have warned us, do not do this, do not allow euthanasia. You will destroy what we have built. Euthanasia is an injury, a crime, a truly inhuman thing to, truly inhuman society, truly human society is recognized by the place it gives its weakest members. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Quebec does not need the culture of death, but rather a culture of life. The Quebec Charter of Human Rights and Freedoms proclaims loud and clear, all human beings are equal in worth and dignity, and every human being has a right to life and to personal security, inviolability, and freedom. Okay, so that's essentially a summation of some of the arguments against. Toujours vivant, not dead yet does not deal with the sanctity of life argument. Our arguments are completely focused on issues related to people with disabilities. The witnesses during the speeches before the law was adopted and all through the process have offered their version, repeated their version of the history of the law ad nauseum. But here's the history that I saw and lived. First, the Commission on the Question of Dying with Dignity received more testimonials against euthanasia than in favor. Though the Commission on the Question of Dying with Dignity brought in experts from far and wide, they did not solicit testimony from experts with disabilities who have worked against euthanasia and assisted suicide for 20 to 30 years, such as Diane Coleman of Not Dead Yet in the United States, or Rhonda Weeb or Jim Dirksen of the Council of Canadians with Disabilities. They relied on groups such as COFAN, who developed their position statement during a one-day retreat. So comparing 30 years of advocacy and research on this issue to a one-day retreat to develop a position is kind of a radical departure, but Quebec, the Commission chose to rely on the group that had one day of study of the issue versus 30 years. The Commission members and all the members of the National Assembly who looked at the bill thereafter ignored the fact that people with disabilities are the group most directly affected by the end-of-life practices. On their fact-finding trips to the Netherlands and Belgium, the Commission did not solicit testimony from euthanasia opponents, so they were just sort of looking at one side of the question. Despite the number of comments opposing euthanasia, the Commission on the Question of Dying with Dignity recommended a policy for medical aid in dying. So that was the report that came out in March of 2012. The law itself was, filed, the bill itself was filed on June 12th of last year, so not even a year ago, and amid much fanfare and everybody patting each other on the back. An invitation was necessary to testify before the Commission on Health and Social Services, who heard the law, had hearings on the bill itself. A major effort, including embarrassing the Commission, was needed for Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet to make ourselves heard. I submitted many requests. Beginning the day I heard they had put out the schedule of hearings, I contacted many people who contacted them on my behalf, asking that Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet be heard. And there was no response and no modification. And it wasn't until having sat in the hearings for a week and speaking to someone who was already testifying that, who then said that Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet should be allowed to testify. It wasn't until all of that happened that we were allowed to testify. So, we sort of embarrassed them into doing it, but in fact, we were one of the few disability groups who testified against the law. There were still many problems with the law even after the amendments came down. So, though 25 people voted against the law in principle in October of last year, and amendments were filed, there's still a lot of problems with the law. The law is still sloppy and imprecise. The term end of life is not defined in the law, but this is a central pillar to understanding and applying it. Without the definition, the law will be subject to immediate and probably multiple court challenges just on that basis. I'm going to stop here and see if there are any questions over in the other room. let's go look in the other room. We're nice and quiet over here. Yes, we're nice and quiet. No questions have come through. Okay. So we'll go back here. Okay. I have to keep an eye on two windows, and I'm not good at that. Okay. Let's see. The second problem with the law, as it was passed, is that there is nothing to prevent an heir from helping a person to fill out the request form or from signing as a witness. So if somebody decides they want grandma's money, they can get their pal in there, and both of them can sort of encourage grandma to sign the form because grandma's really having a hard time and she's had a nice life and really it's time to go, and encourage grandma to sign the form, and then they'll sign as witnesses, and ta-da, it's done. You know, even in front of the doctor, they can make everything look nice. So there's nothing to prevent an heir from doing that, nothing to prescribe it in the law. The competence evaluation, according to the law, is done by a doctor who might lack the expertise in drug interactions, mental illness, or socioeconomic factors that could be influencing a person's judgment or their capacity, basically. And sort of following on that, there is no court hearing in determining whether the person is competent, and to ensure that the person is making a free and informed choice. This idea of a free and informed choice is also fundamental to the law, but nowhere, you know, except for the people who voted against the law in their speeches before the, really, no one brought it up directly to say that if somebody doesn't have what they need or have good palliative care, then their decision might be influenced. Their ability to make a free and informed choice might be influenced. But, you know, that is absolutely the case. And how can we say somebody's making a free and informed choice if they aren't getting adequate care or don't have adequate resources to have a good quality of life? And that's one of our main reasons for opposing such laws. That, you know, you can't have a free and informed choice if people don't have choices. The person is not required to receive suicide prevention services. There's nothing in the law that requires the person to receive suicide prevention services. Also, the law doesn't guarantee that the person will receive services and supports that could improve the quality of their life. So those are some other problems. And I must have put that somewhere else, but I'll find it. During the speech, yeah, right. I did say that this person, there's no guarantee that the person will receive the services they need, and we'll get to something related to that, which was really frightening during the final set of speeches. During the speeches before the vote, most members of the National Assembly, MNAs, spoke about the great cooperation and nonpartisan atmosphere that surrounded the development and debate on the law. However, this did not result in a high-quality law, as I've just described. The MNAs seemed incapable of making the link between the cuts in services that have been going on and the deplorable state of long-term care facilities that they were just discussing that morning, and the potential for abuse and problems with the law. They believe that Quebec society is different from every other society in history in terms of the way that people who are disenfranchised will be treated. So, you know, essentially they said, oh, no, nothing will go wrong here. Nothing will go wrong. We're all so good, nothing will go wrong. The MNAs fashioned this rosy history as a defense strategy to prevent any court from interfering with the law, essentially. That's why they were so repetitive about saying this is such a great law, we did such a good job. Courts don't like to get involved with statutes and how they're done, except when there is a serious problem. They presume the legislature has done a good job, done things above board and appropriately, especially when the record, the legislative record is full of comments by representatives saying that they did a great job. So the members of the National Assembly, essentially by making all these comments about what a good job they were doing, were preparing in case of a legal challenge to the law to basically build up the record to say that they did a great job. In his speech before adoption of the law, Philippe Couillard, who is the head of the Liberal Party, which is in control, announced the effect of his austerity policies on Bill 52, on the law. And this was, to me, the most frightening part of yesterday. He said, and this is my translation of his comments, "Let's be frank. For the citizens who are listening, read the law of health and social services. All rights are qualified. There is no total unlimited right in society. All rights come with a caveat that says, taking into account the human and financial resources available. This law is written like that." So, yes, we can hope that most citizens will have access to palliative care, and the fact of having it in the law will give more authority to the Minister of Health and Social Services and to officials of Quebec's health network to develop this care at home and in institutions in a way that they will be, the care will be as accessible as possible. And I believe that we understand that to mean that in the vast majority of cases, high quality palliative care, whether that be in the home or in hospice, will suffice to ease people's pain and anguish. So essentially what he's saying is that even though this law says that everybody has a right to palliative care, that's not true. And he is in the process of employing austerity policies like the ones we've seen in Greece and in Europe, and those austerity policies are going to reduce all social services, all health services. And that is because it always affects the poorest and least powerful people in a society first. That is going to affect people with disabilities first. And so all the promises about a good palliative care system, that's not going to work out for the poorest people and for the people with the most need and the most densely packed areas or in the most rural areas where the service is not available. A lot of people are not going to get what they need to live comfortably or to live independently or to have the quality of life that every human being deserves, or to have, in effect, the rights that are guaranteed by the Charter of Rights to Equality. As we know now, people with disabilities in Quebec do not have equal rights. The Charter guarantees those rights, but the way people live, without home care, without access to public buildings, without equal access to public transportation, without, with the level of job discrimination, with a very low monthly income if you're on welfare benefits or benefits, social benefits. All of those things show that people with disabilities do not enjoy equal status in our society. So add to that the effects of austerity on this law, and it's going to push people, give people even fewer choices, and it's going to push people toward euthanasia. That is a fact. And Mr. Couillard said as much in his speech yesterday. This is exactly what we were afraid of. Bill 52 and And so let's talk about some organizing issues. What does this mean for Canada and for the disability community? First of all, the message here is what happened in Quebec should be a wake-up call for groups in other provinces. This whole process, they meant to make as perfect and bulletproof as possible so nobody could attack it. Oh, here's somebody making a comment. Here's a person making a comment. I am going to select that person. Is that how I do it? I don't know. Okay. I don't know. Hello. I'm in Ecuador and Student University. Okay. Okay. I'm sorry, Fabian, it took me so long to notice you. I don't see well. And I'm just going to check and see if anybody's on the other thing here. Okay. So there's a person named Fabian who has made a comment. He said he's from Ecuador at the university. And so I don't know if he has a comment, but he's just saying where he's from. Anyway, so this should be a wake-up call to people in other provinces in Canada. This is on its way, and right now there are legal challenges, which I'll talk about in a few minutes, but now you see what happened in Quebec, and other provinces will probably try to follow this model to go ahead with their laws. I know Catherine Wynne has talked about this in Ontario. I know other provinces have talked about it, so we'll see what happens in the future. Let's see. Is he making any other questions? No, I don't see any other questions. Okay. The second thing is collaborating with groups who oppose, even if they don't have exactly the same issues, is important. But what is most important is to ensure that if you're working with another group, that other group recognizes that the people with disabilities need to be out front in charge of the message. Because right now, this idea has traction and has get somewhere because it's seen as a progressive idea, and it's set as a progressive idea against conservative and religious people. And the only way to counter that is by the disability rights message, which is essentially more progressive than progressives. So that's the best way to counter this argument. And so if you're going to work with other groups, which is really a good idea, just make sure that the people with disabilities are leading the way, not following. Because otherwise, as we've learned from many years of doing this, the media and the public are going to see people with disabilities as puppets of the right and religious people, not as actors. And they won't see the disability message, they'll just see the religious message, and they'll think of this as a pity issue for people with disabilities. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Let's see. The disability community, the lessons that we've learned in Quebec are some of the same messages we learned in Massachusetts, that even though we think that people are very, very seduced by this idea that euthanasia and assisted suicide will give them self-determination, because they may not feel self-determination in their life now, because they're socially disadvantaged, they're economically disadvantaged, and they're politically disadvantaged. They don't really want to see that, and they don't want to see that assisted suicide will contribute to that disadvantage, not oppose it. They believe that having the right to assisted suicide will give them self-determination, but in fact, what it means is that as they don't have much choice now in the way they run their lives, they'll have, the same or less choice, except for they'll have the option to die. And really, that's kind of what societies have wanted of people with disabilities for a long time. That's what eugenics is about. And so, you know, if you look at Monsieur Couillard's statement, you know, you don't really have a right to palliative care. So this is the other option, which is euthanasia. So, and many people are afraid of losing the limited options, the limited services they have. They're afraid of speaking out, that they'll be retaliated against. They're fighting other fights. They may be fighting their individual fight to get home care, or they may be fighting other issues like access to transportation. And so those are some of the problems that we run up against. And it's going to take a lot to organize people, but I think that those of us who are working on this need to provide leadership, need to step out and say, this is dangerous and we are taking a position. We understand that some people disagree, but we need to take a strong position against this, because there are people taking a strong position for it. So, what is next? Well, what's next in Quebec is that Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet will work with other groups on legal issues at two levels. First, we're still working on the Carter case, and in the Supreme Court of Canada, the Supreme Court has added the issue to the Carter case of whether a province has the right to pass a law that goes against the federal criminal law. So the lawyers are arguing that issue in the Supreme Court, and the Council of Canadians with Disabilities is an intervener in that case. Now, the second issue is that there is already one lawsuit that's been filed in Quebec on behalf of a person with a disability and a doctor. There's going to be another lawsuit filed shortly, and so Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet has the opportunity, if it wants to intervene and sort of put itself in as another plaintiff in one of those suits. And so that's something we need to consider, and we'll need support, legal help to put that forward. So that's in the planning stage. Finally, we want to try to have input into the government's process of implementing the law, writing the regulations and implementing the law. We needed to take a very strong no position in the process of passing the law, because if you don't take a strong position, you know, they undermine you and they chip away. So take the strong position at first, and then once the law is passed, then you can go in and try to do damage control. And that's where we are now, to try to influence the policies and the way the law is implemented to try to reduce the damage as much as possible. So that is all for Quebec right now. I have one news brief, which is another bit of sort of bad news, which is that the Committee on Health and Social Services of the New Jersey Assembly, in a vote of 7-4, forwarded a bill that would allow assisted suicide there. In a 2-hour hearing, several people with disabilities testified against the bill. They said that pain at the end of life can be relieved, that disability does not mean a lack of dignity, that many prognoses of 6 months to live or less are wrong, and that the high rate of mistreatment of elders and people with disabilities can lead to deadly abuse under such laws. Two of the representatives who voted for the bill, admitted that they have doubts. So that sort of makes me wonder why they didn't vote against it, because when you have doubts about a bill that could cause people's deaths, it seems like you might vote against it. And here's another person, Syed. Hi, Syed Shah. I will say hello. He says hello. I'll select, whoops, see, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I pushed the other guy aside. Hi, Syed. He says hello. So, okay. So one thing that happened here is that activists didn't have much time to organize for this event because the hearing was announced only a week before the event happened, and the activists opposing the bill believe that that the people who support the bill did this as a way to try to prevent a lot of people from showing up, but they kind of fail because a lot of people with disabilities did show up, and in fact there were more people with disabilities, more opponents of the bill who showed up than supporters, but despite that the legislators voted to send the bill on to the next stage of consideration. So I'm going to see if there's anybody who might have had a question over in the other side here. Nope, there's nobody on the YouTube channel who's stated a question. So let's see. Okay, so how to reach us. We have a website which is TVNDY.ca. You can also follow us on Twitter at @TVNDY. You can follow us on Facebook, which is facebook.com/toujours vivant, not dead yet, all one word. You can also, let's see, those are the three main ones, I guess. Okay, you can watch old, past programs of our online discussions from our website at tvndy.ca. We have them only in English and French. I'm sorry, none of us speak Spanish or Arabic. But you can go to our website and select events column and then select the date that you want to listen for the discussion, and you'll find it, although I have to put up a few from the last couple of weeks. And finally, you can email me if you want information about our activities, which is, my email address is tigrlily61@gmail.com. So I think I listed all the ways to be in touch with us. Oh, maybe I didn't mention the Twitter feed, which is @TVNDY. So these discussions are always better when people ask questions that are relevant to what's happening in the discussion, and you know, when people participate directly, and I hope that people will do so in the future. But I appreciate those who come and tune in, and I invite you to come back next week. On Friday, we will be here. Thank you very much for listening, and have a good week. Goodbye.